All right, Shalom. First off, I'm start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakakodash. Yahweh being the Heavenly Father's true name, Yahweh Shai being the name of His only begotten Son. Double honor unto the elders and the apostles, the great millstone who rule well and teach well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to all you walking throughout the four corners of the earth, continuing to push and do the works in truth and in sincerity. All right, this is the brother Mashah Ma'ayam, one of the men here with the GMS branch out here in the morning camp. Here with another quick lesson through the Spirit, and pretty much going into it's truly a fight, okay, being in this flesh. All right. It's a fight to remain focused, it's a fight to continue to train this flesh to you know, or to continue to control the reins, okay, being in this flesh. All right. Because it's being in this flesh, like the scriptures say. Let's start off with that. All right. Let's start off with the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 9 and verse 15, and it reads, "For the corruptible body presseth down the soul, and the earthly tabernacle weighed down the mind that museth upon many things." All right. So being in this flesh, even it has your mind musing upon many different things, okay, that can distract you even when you're, trying to read, listening to lessons, right? Especially if it's a long lesson, a lot of times, sometimes, your mind might drift away onto different things and you're gonna have to pause and come back, right? But that's a part of the fight, being in this flesh, because we also have to fight for our focus and attention onto this word, you know. So from there, let's get Galatians chapter 5 and verse 16. And it reads, "This I say then, walk in the spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh." Okay. So it's saying to walk in the spirit, okay, that way we won't fulfill the lust of the flesh. Now, of course, you gotta eat, right? You gotta do different things, to keep up with this body, right? But what's it saying? Let's get it's saying walk in the spirit. And what's the spirit? Let's get John chapter 6 and verse 63. And it reads, "It is the spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life." Okay. So the words, okay, that Yahushua was speaking, okay, these scriptures, okay, this is the spirit, you know. So walking in these words and these scriptures and applying the things that are written, okay, is how we're gonna, have power over this flesh. All right. Because pretty much really, if you feed the flesh more, then that's what's going to get stronger. And if you feed the spirit more, then the spirit is going to be stronger than the flesh. Okay, which is how we want it, you know. But going back to Galatians chapter 5 and verse 16, verse 17, it says, "For the flesh lusteth against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh, and these are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would." Okay. So the flesh is always pulling you one direction, and the spirit is wants to be in these scriptures, all right, and take heed unto his word. Okay. That's why even when you're on the line sometimes, or not on the line, but when you're listening to the apostles, right, or even watching different lessons, a lot of times, sometimes different things will just come into your mind, randomly out of nowhere, and now you're thinking upon that, all right, and then you got to pause and come back onto the lesson that you were listening to, you know. That's a part of the fight of being in this flesh, right? You know, or even like that Wisdom of Solomon 9 we just read, right? Be being on the line speaking, you might be listening to the main speaker, but then many different distractions and things, can happen, and now it just now you're not you just you got to retract, and listen up on what the speaker, the main speaker, is saying, right? But that's all a part of this fight, and remaining focused, you know. From there, let's get the book of Romans chapter 13 and verse 14, and it reads, "But put ye on the Lord Yahushua Mashiach, and make no provision for the flesh to fulfill the lust thereof." Okay. So putting on your Yahushua Mashiach is what? Walking in the scriptures and in this word. Okay. Applying the things that are written. That's how we're gonna overpower this flesh, you know. Because a lot of times this flesh wants to do many different things and that are not you know, the spirit, right? You know. So from there, let's get the book of Joshua, chapter 1 and verse 8, and it reads, "This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein, for then shalt thou make thy way prosperous, and then shalt thou have good success." Okay? You know, so we're supposed to meditate upon these things daily, you know, and keep these words strong upon our mind. Okay? And it says what? For then shalt thou make thy way prosperous. Okay? When we have these things in our minds to guide us and direct our way in righteousness, you know, things work out, for, you know, for the good, to, you know, when you're applying the things that are written, you know. And it says, and then shalt thou have good success, right? Each and every single day, the Lord makes sure things go well for you, you know. But, you know, another key thing is what? We got to continue to meditate upon these things to keep them strong upon our mind, all right? And I mentioned that, you know, example of being out there on the line, you know, that's why keeping these words upon our mind, you know, constantly meditating upon these things, okay, you know, will have you focus and you know, ready to bring out a precept in many different things, you know. And I'm only mentioning it because that's something, you know, I personally, you know, am working to do better at myself, right? But from here, let's go to 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 14. And it reads, Salakia, 1 Timothy 4 and 14, neglect not the gift that is in thee, which was given thee by prophecy with the laying on of the hands of the presbytery, right? So each and every single day, you know, we want to make sure we don't neglect it, you know. And sometimes it can happen by way of being distracted, you know, by different things, you know, or worrying about other things that are going on in your life, right? But once again, you know, we have to lock back in and continue to focus on the main thing, which is this word, this truth, you know. Verse 15, meditate upon these things, give thyself wholly to them, that thy profiting may appear to all, right? So we got to continue to meditate upon these words, these scriptures, you know. And it says, give thyself wholly to it, you know. So having a full attention and focus upon it, you know, especially while we're in the moment, you know, whether it be reading, watching the apostles, or listening to a lesson a brother did, right? Or when you're on the line speaking, you know, we want to make sure, and I'm only doing this lesson because, you know, this is something you know, I noticed that I need to do better at myself, right? Fighting to be more focused and locked in. But right, when you're in the moment, you know, when you're on the line speaking, you know, you're there, you're fully attentive, you know. So from here, let's go to the book of 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 15, and it reads, study to show thyself approved unto the Most High, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Okay, so we want to continue to study and to show ourselves approved unto the Most High, you know. And that's another thing too, you know, for being out there on the line, you know, because it'll make it easier, you know. That way you know what you're talking about, you know what you're saying. Okay, you know how to add on to a brother when he's speaking, you know, the right precepts, you know, that can go along with what the brother's saying, right? You know, But it's all a part of what? Being better and remaining focused, you know? So, but that's the point, you know, really just putting up a fight, you know, to stay focused, you know, and yeah, you know, not continue to feed the flesh too much and not the spirit, you know. So but I wanna with that, I'm gonna say call halal Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rachakodash. Double honors unto the elders and the apostles, the great millstone who rule well and teach well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to all you walking through the four corners of the earth, continuing to push and do the works in truth and in sincerity. Shalom.